What is going on, beautiful people? Welcome back to the 817 podcast, where we talk about the lovely city of Fort Worth, Texas. We get into politics, business, culture, news. If it impacts you as a Fort Worthian, we discuss it. We give you one big story, 3 short stories, wins, losses, and actions, and we drop it every Monday. I'm with my co-host, Ann Zeta, and our producer, Wesley Kirk.
It's been a while since we've had a regular episode. This is nice.
It is nice.
And we are in a situation, right? And we are having this moment in a very monumental time.
And we're in a situation because we didn't start recording until late on the day that we normally record. So I'm a little exhausted myself to start off a hard episode.
Don't you tell me that. I'm going to be up till 3 a.m. editing this.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. And as people getting this in the afternoon, I guess that's probably going to happen. Or are they getting it? You trying to get it in the morning?
3 a.m. I'm going to try and do it on schedule.
Look at Wesley. Dedication to the game.
I think we said you didn't have to.
No,
I
think
could
you
drop
should.
it a little bit late.
I don't remember hearing that.
He's good. No,
I was
let him
planning on
focus.
being up late. I've had a crazy weekend, so just add this to it. Yeah.
All right, well, let's go ahead and jump into the big story. The big story today is, I want to be crystal clear as we talk about this. When we were all texting me, Ann, and Wesley about what happened this week in America, where a right-wing influencer podcaster got killed, we were not going to touch this story because what we talk about here in this 817 podcast is things that happen in Fort Worth, Texas. We actually had a guest prepared, but due to all of this and our Mayor Mattie Parker, writing a letter about Charlie Kirk, now we believe that this is why we're discussing it. So let's be clear that I don't think that who Charlie Kirk is or what he was about. We all believe that he was an extremist. He was someone who is not good to society. That doesn't mean what happened to him is right, but that also means that we do not have to mourn him or highlight him and his legacy, which you're seeing happening in very curious spaces, which includes our mayor. But I want to give context, like you guys kind of talk about, share about like, why are we talking about this? What did the mayor do?
So there is a council member who posted something on her personal account sharing a story with a quote that Mr. Kirk had made about the Second Amendment and how, unfortunately, in order to protect the Second Amendment, that people would die of gun violence. And that was shared by a council member on her personal page, indicating
there was no commentary. It was just straight up a quote from Charlie Kirk.
Right. She did put on top of the quote from him, unfortunate, which was one of the words from his quote. And I'm not sure what prompted the mayor to feel like she needed to respond to that, because there's been other times when there have been things that people have shared and other things that people have put on social media that have been objectionable that she hasn't felt the need to raise up in that way. And I was actually looking forward to not having a conversation about this, although he has been to Fort Worth. He came to TCU. So, I mean, in that was one of the universities that he came and put up his little sign that says, "Debate me," and starts asking people to talk to him about things that can be really harmful to marginalized communities.
Exactly. Just gives him an excuse to spew his hate speech.
Yeah, and I think the reason why, like, everyone who listens to the 817 podcast clearly understands the potential of our city and how our city can be a city for the people. Our city can be one of those shining new 21st century cities of Texas that represents all people and allow everyone to feel connected. And for so long, our mayor has gotten away from being like somehow the center of what's right in Fort Worth. And we've been advocating on this podcast how for the last 6 months, easily, she's been blatantly falling more and more into extremism. And we've given the timeline from eliminating LGBTQ badges and reading competitions over the summer to mercy culture, to allowing Judge Tim O'Hare to racially gerrymander. And so she's been silent on things that are we've been talking about her connectedness to extremism. And for her to attack a councilwoman for what she put on her personal Instagram, to what you guys said, it was actually nothing she actually said.
Yeah, I think it very much misconstrued what the post was. It implied that it was celebrating his death, and I don't think that it was any any such thing.
Yeah, because I mean, I know a lot of people saw Mattie's letter first and they were like, what could have possibly been posted? And then when we looked into it, like, oh, that's nothing. That's literally just quoting his own words.
The councilwoman who did the original post was contacted by the news and gave an explanation of what her thought process was about that. And again, it kind of went back to explaining that it wasn't anything that had been construed in the letter.
So we all saw that the mayor wrote this letter, and her letter, since it's shorter, says, when you take an oath of office, you have a responsibility to encourage civility, kindness, and decency. As an elected officials and community leaders, we are held to the highest standard, and we owe it to the people we represent to always be above board. Yesterday, we saw the worst example of this by one of my fellow council members, essentially condoning violence because of someone's political views. It is very clear that the killing of Charlie Kirk was a political assassination, and there's no justification for evil. I've been heartened by the leadership we saw across the country from leaders of every political view who all understand their role. Utah Governor Cox said yesterday that if anyone celebrated the news of Kirk's shooting, I would beg you to look in the mirror and to see if you can find a better angel in there somewhere. May we all find our better angels. So we get that. And so in my mind, something really, really bad happened. I remember our Discord team, which if you haven't joined the 817 Gather Discord, you should. But we're all discussing it with everyone, like, what happened? Who? And like you said, we find a screenshot from Elizabeth Beck just saying unfortunate of Charlie Kirk, who said that, yes, it's unfortunate with the Second Amendment. People will, it's worth the cost. And she's just saying, well, it looks like it bit him in the butt. Like what, like that now got to him.
I don't even know if she was saying that.
Yeah.
The part that, like, when I saw this letter from the mayor, and I feel like, I was like, there had to be something really bad. And unfortunately for me, I thought it was Chris Nettles, cursing off somebody, in public or something. I was like, what did Chris do? And then I see it was Elizabeth, and I'm just like, here's what Beau French said. 5 days before No Kings Rally, where thousands of Fort Worthians were downtown, a few well-placed snipers would end violent protests in 2 seconds.
And where was Mattie's letter then?
Where was it then when your Tarrant GOP Republican leader of your political party was talking about pitting snipers on Fort Worth roofs? And we remember there was people at No Kings wearing bulletproof vests, and there was people who didn't go because they were afraid for their lives, and the mayor of Fort Worth, Texas had nothing to say about that. This is why her enabling and somehow taking a fringe podcaster and giving him any light on a Fort Worth letter is dangerous.
Yeah.
And it's you're instigating something that you didn't have to do, and there's so much I question around it. What happened next, though? Chris Nettles tried to defend Elizabeth Beck, right? I think it's good to talk about everybody's name because I also have questions about why people move certain ways.
Yeah, don't say names because the letter didn't name her.
No, but everyone knows already because of the news. So I'm going to say names because there's also questions I have there. Charles Lauersdorf backs Mattie, and then you see Michael Crane in the comments talking about, we have seen Elizabeth Beck's demonic behavior.
Darkness and evil which fills her heart is what he said. And then said it was demonic.
Michael Crane is the last person to be able to call anyone demonic. Like, I could do a whole podcast on Michael Crane. But
it's just so hypocritical because Mattie's talking about how we shouldn't be divided. And I'm like, you invited the divisiveness. Like, you put this out there, so now it's newsworthy. Everyone's going to write about it because you're the mayor and this is your letter. And then Charles Lauersdorf gets in, Mike Crane gets in, Chris Nettles, like, she deepened the dividing line when didn't have to be this way. Yeah, could have just not said anything. Wasn't worth saying anything about.
Well, and it's not. The mayor is not in charge of the council. The council does not belong to the mayor.
Exactly.
Everybody up there has exactly the same vote.
Yep.
And while the mayor needs to work with the council about things and try to bring people together around things, I mean, I think that would be a good way to be a mayor.
Yep.
It's not her job to punish a council member for anything.
Exactly.
And when people were calling for people to be fired or recall elections, none of that is under the purview of a fellow elected official who's at the same level.
Exactly.
Citywide election versus a district, but that's just not their job.
And this is why this was a big misstep to the mayor. It's why. Another one, Judge Tim O'Hare, after 120 of us go to racial gerrymander, commissioner court vote, he says Democrats have become the party of illegal aliens, pedophiles, and murderers in communism. Doesn't seem like a good recipe for electoral wins. So it's like
more hate speech.
More hate speech.
Just had no problem with.
Yeah, and you're now over what? And so now I'm thinking, okay, what had to happen? So obviously these crazy, weird right-wingers follow everybody and probably took a screenshot of Elizabeth Beck's thing, put it on Twitter, but somehow it gets to Mattie. And here's the three ways I'm looking at it. Number one, what we're doing as a progressive movement and showing that we want a better Fort Worth is bothering Fort Worth. The Fort Worth right is like, holy smokes. Fort Worth is showing a lot of progressive movement with the DEI vote, with a lot of the activism that we've done, how we're showing up to commissioner's court. And so, and then they're pressing Mattie, like, you got to do something to like show our base, you got to do something. They were agitating her in some capacity, which I'm not saying she is a collaborator, but I'm saying she's definitely getting pushed because you wouldn't care about this if you weren't getting pushed. But my second option is then what happens is like, this leads to a lot of runway for them that now that she officialized it, now there's going to be Charlie Kirk events downtown. You have people right now at Trinity Park with we don't know what's there, but I mean, hundreds of people. It's just getting very concerning. And I don't know how you can say what the mayor did by being punitive on something so small when she has allowed so much to be said in her party. It was just a lost move, and she has enabled extremism in our city.
And are we going to talk about the flags as well?
That is second error of Mattie. So context, right? First error, she brings Charlie Kirk an official city letter, not even like saying, hey, rest in peace. It was, hey, attack Elizabeth Beck. Why are you bringing extremism into our city like that? Two, then Trump puts on his social media that they're lowering the flags for Charlie Kirk, and I guess expecting everyone else to do it. So then our city does a post showing the flags are going to be down for Charlie Kirk.
All of them.
All of them because of this executive order.
Is it an executive order? That was my question. I thought that you did some research saying that cities didn't have to necessarily comply with...
Just federal buildings.
Federal buildings are the ones that have to do what the president says.
Well, when President Donald Trump has ordered, I'm imagining that he officialized... I mean, like, this is from our... Okay, so this is from our city of Fort Worth social media. Mm-hmm. President Donald J. Trump has ordered that upon all public grounds and buildings throughout the United States, flags be flown at half-staff through sunset on September 14th in memory of Charlie Kirk. Flags at city facilities have been lowered in accordance with the proclamation. There's a picture of the flags lowered.
One thing I think is crazy is that with how hot this issue is, the city of Fort Worth's communication department would not have volunteered to put the social media post about lowering the flags out of their own accord. Someone asked them to do that. Most likely Mattie Parker, because it went out quick. And so I think this was done very intentionally to send a signal to Trump, to the far right, that we are in line with you, that Mattie wanted everyone to know that the city of Fort Worth allows this extremist behavior, allows this mourning of someone who spews hate speech. This is acceptable, and we want you to know that. And I think it's just despicable. Like, It invites more of it. It invites more of this bad behavior.
Well, I think it's crazy that we do it for this person
yes.
and haven't done it for other people. But if there's a standard by which the federal government says everybody should do it.
Let me tell you the people who got the flag lowered before Charlie Kirk. His Holiness Pope Francis, President Jimmy Carter, You want me to keep going? Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, former First Lady Miss Carter, Senator Dianne Feinstein, Queen Elizabeth, Secretary Madeleine Albright, Colin Powell. And we just put it down for a right-wing podcast extremists. So this whole now this goes into the part that we're probably all dealing with. All of you have seen me in this podcast get more and more passionate and more concerned about this city. And a lot of y'all who listened to the pod talked about how radical or how more progressive, whatever EJ's getting, why is he being like this? And this is why. Yeah. Because what's the scariest part about this right now is not just that the mayor is playing to her base because she needs that base, is that you are all on our Facebooks, and people who you thought were normal are actually really brokenhearted and mad, not at Charlie Kirk, but all of the left or whoever, and you're shocked that this is how big MAGA is. You want to know how big it's gotten from 2016 to 2025? It is monumentally big. And now you and I and everyone in this room has to decide, what are we going to do about that?
I think you actually just described very accurately how I've been feeling, because I literally have been on my Facebook looking at people and what they are saying and being pretty brokenhearted, because some people just didn't even know who this man was before this happened. But there were a lot of people who did know, and I did know because he had been here in Fort Worth. And I have heard the things that he's saying and gone down the rabbit hole of watching the things that he debated, and saw that he was debating topics that personally affect people that I love, who put them in a position where they felt like they were unsafe because the hate speech that he was using was making people riled up about those individuals. And I have someone in my family that is in that category. And these people are totally fine with that and are now mourning him and acting as if he was just this great person. And these are people that I see in my daily life. And so, yes, I would say maybe I was not aware of how bad it was.
One of the things that woke me up to this is the Kimball Art Museum, when they had the Germany kind of art history exhibit between the era of normal Germany and having art to Adolf Hitler getting elected and then getting to the power that he got to. I mean, it took the guy 10 years. And I bet there was a moment where someone took out someone or something happened back then, and then they saw the backlash to people supporting a Nazi regime and were shook. And I think that's, to me, the biggest saddest, the saddest part to me is MAGA is massive. And I think why it's also dangerous is because we're still playing moderate niceness. You have people like Mark Vesey, who is calling Charlie Kirk an activist and that he had a right, he was a great debater. You have Charlie, you have James Tellerico, who's he's a child of God, and even though we all disagreed, freedom of speech, this was hate speech. This was an extremist. Let's just do a couple quotes. Quote, this is a Charlie Kirk quote. Black women do not have the processing power to be taken seriously. You have to go steal a white person's slot. This is a guy who said, didn't earn it is what DEI means. I can't stand the word empathy. I think empathy is a made up new age term and it does a lot of damage. Another quote. We made a huge mistake when we passed the Civil Rights Act in the 1960s. Another quote. MLK was awful. He's not a good person. Another quote. If I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. Another quote. LGBTQ is a social contagion. Another quote. We need armed militias to prevent the diminishing and decreasing of white demographics. And our mayor says, and it's sad because it's our mayor and it's the country. The Dallas Cowboys honoring him in front of 100,000 people. The New York Yankees honoring this man, giving him a moment of silence.
I think what some people are mourning is the violence, the political violence. But I don't think that honoring him when he has had all of these incidences of hate speech and attacking marginalized communities is not the way to do that.
The irony to me is that the right are getting so mad at the people who aren't mourning, when the world that Charlie Kirk wanted to live in was one where gun violence was just a necessary evil of the world, and that empathy was not a thing that people feel for one another. And the world that I want to live in is one where gun violence is rare, it's tragic, access to guns should be so difficult that this would be near impossible, and that anyone who does die, we should feel bad for. That's the world I want to live in. Someone who spent their entire life dividing people, spewing hate, speaking towards political violence, hoping someone would act out on it. How is this someone that we should feel bad about? Because when you repeat his words to people, suddenly you're seen as being evil. When it's like, that's what he said. That is what he wanted us to believe in. Yeah, and so it shows you recognize that this is wrong. You recognize that this is not the way that we should be. So why is that so hard to understand that we don't want to live in that world, but he did. And so we're just treating him the way he wanted to be treated.
And the mayor brought that world into our city with a turnkey, and now you're going to have a rally for this guy downtown on Saturday. And for what? Why? What did we do? What did Fort Worth do to get in this fight? A screenshot of what he said? Like, you're gonna write a letter for that? And that's why it's like, we need to be scared of the Mattie Parkers in the world. I'm not scared of the Michael Cranes. I'm not scared of the Nate Scatzlines, because I know who they are. Nate Scatzline speaking at the rally, by the way. I am not scared of those people because I know who they are. It is the middle moderate who then tries to okay it or bring them down a notch and saying, hey, and their comfort is getting challenged. And so they want to bring peace to this. And that is both the Mattie Parker, who thinks she's the mayor of purity, and she uses her white angelness to come down to Fort Worth and say enough is enough, when you're the one doing this. And you're the one enabled this. And we could have gone through a week without having to hear this in Fort Worth. And instead now it's the main event, and people it's the big story of our podcast. And so I'm more mad at the Matties, and I think anyone listening to this pod, or any one of our people who are just checking your reality right now, I am not on this podcast to try to tell you how to think. I'm here to share my opinions, my concerns, my ideas, what I care about. But what I need everyone to do is, I don't care if you're getting more left because of this event. I don't care if you're getting more right because of this event. But what I need you to care about is you need to take a step forward. You need to not just sit there and everything's okay. You can't go back to eating ice cream and watching TV. We are this is now. And you got to start doing something. And you got to start saying, this is how I feel, and this is what I got to stand up for, what I believe in. And I believe if people do that here in Fort Worth, the better side of the world shows up. But we got to stop seeing all this Charlie Kirk stuff and be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Let's go back to Kava. It's time to wake up and participate in democracy. It's time to say that, oh, this EJ guy isn't really that crazy. I'm so passionate about this stuff. Is I left my job and to go all in on Fort Worth because I believe this is the most important thing to be doing right now, is fighting for our democracy. And the best way to do that is to make sure Fort Worth doesn't get handed over to extremism. And that's what we're on for the next 2 elections. That I don't think after 3 elections, we have what we all grew up in. You said it before. People don't know life before Donald Trump, these young kids. We're living in the moment. You and I and us right now for the next 5 years, we're living in a moment. Will they ever get to feel another Obama speech? Will they ever hear that Obama speech? We are deciding if those kids will ever do. So I don't know what else is more important than anyone else right now than this is the game we're playing. You can't watch what Charlie Kirk is activated. you got to come on and figure out how are you going to make a difference.
So going back to our regular format of a big story and short stories, which we haven't had the opportunity to do in a while. Our first short story is talking about the Fort Worth budget, because the city of Fort Worth is just finishing up their public meetings where they rolled out the budget and shared with everyone what next year's 2026 budget is going to be. And they will be voting on that budget on the 16th of this month.
Yep. Tuesday.
And I think many of us attended some of those meetings and had some questions and got some of those questions answered. There are two short stories under this short story number one, both by the Fort Worth Report, that talk about this budget. One basically indicating that the majority of the budget goes to police. The other one speaking to the Fort Worth Crime Control and Prevention budget, which is being raised by 2.6%. to almost $140 million. And to be clear, that 2.6% is not a raise in the tax rate affecting that budget. It is just because of the fact that sales have gone up. And so that 0.5% that goes to the Crime Prevention and Control District is increased over last year.
Yeah, because sales tax pays for the Crime Control and Prevention, CCPD.
We got really focused on the budget because after the DEI vote, where it was about $40 million to defend DEI against Donald Trump, now the fact that we're living in a Charlie Kirk world, I can't even imagine that we thought that was possible looking at what's happening. But anyways, like, we were like, okay, like, why is like 40 million like so concerning to everyone, and like, where's all of our money going? So I've already been to two of those budget meetings. The councils had their own private meetings with their groups. I'm going to, if you're listening to this on Monday, Nettles also has one, so I'm going to that one as well. I think it's important for listeners to go to these budget meetings because you get to they get to hear what you care about.
And the attendance is so low that
It's
your
so
voice
low.
counts for a lot.
I went to Charles Lauersdorf one. The reason why I went to District 4 is because Charles Lauersdorf loves to go up there on the dais and then say, well, what my residents want is this. And I'm like, oh, well, let me go see what he's talking about. So I go show up to his thing. There's maybe 25, 30 real people. A lot of staff there.
And you went
right?
to a Saturday one, which is more well attended.
Yeah. But like, and that's what Jay Chapa goes, I want to give District 4 a congrats. This is the largest meeting we've had on this, the whole trip or tour.
In a city of 1 million people.
Yeah.
I know Elizabeth asked me if there was more people showing up at budget meetings when I was on council than there were, because she thought District 9 kind of had a lower turnout than she expected. And there were maybe 20 people, 15 or 20 people that were not staff. There were a lot of staff in the room too.
And so I'm sitting in Charles Lauersdorf event, and yes, everyone else there is white, over 60. And there was like these 4 women in the front, who they have Charles around the neck, like they are, and this is what they were saying. They were like, we're spending $9 million of CCPD or $11 million on CCPD dollars on these nonprofits. I don't want my tax dollars to go to nonprofits because I don't believe in these, their values. And one of those is the YMCA, which I'm sure the C in YMCA is Christian. So I'm almost just like baffled here that they're like, we wanted to fund the YMCA. And I'm sitting here like, so I kind of raise my hand and I say, hey, full disclosure, by the way, people should go to the meeting. It's 2 hours and you get an hour convo, and you got your district council member there. You got this city manager, all the assistant city managers, basically everyone who makes a decision on billions of dollars. And you get to just sit and talk with them. And these ladies took up like 45 minutes of the time.
No timer at those meetings.
You would have loved it. One of them brought up the AI semiconductor, though, like the AI factory. And I was like, oh, I think Wesley would have been about this one right here. And but it was just wild.
They handed over the mic a couple of times at ours, and I was like, you need to hold on to that mic. You can't just hand over the mic. You got to hold the mic for the person. So I raised my hand. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go. All right. So, and I said, first one was, hey, Charles Lauersdorf, I just want you to know I've been going to City Hall meetings. I just see that you've been talking about your residents. I want to make sure who they are. Just give you guys perspective. You guys have 93-ish thousand people who live in this district. If we lined you all up from oldest to youngest, the middle person is 36. All right. So one, I just want you guys to know that. And 48% of this district is black or brown.
Good.
Charles, I know you're occupied right now, but I want you to remember who are actually, this isn't all your residents. And then obviously then I went into the whole like spiel about how we're the 11th largest city, yet we don't even crack the 25 largest city budgets. And a lot of you are complaining about things. One person's like, we should have a senior center in our town. You know, Watauga has one or someone like that, you know, has it. And it's like, and then someone's like, my potholes and all this and that. And so after I say that, after I say, hey, by the way, like, how are you guys plan to fund a world-class city with not even have a, do you believe you can do that? Immediately after I did it, the oldest guy in the room raises his hand and goes, I just want to congratulate y'all for growing to the 11th largest city and doing it without having to be in the top 25 budget. I was like, you literally were just complaining about potholes, bro. Like,
how you think they got that way?
Like, my whole thing about the budget stuff and what drives me crazy about the Republican side of the budget stuff, you got cats in there yelling like, oh, the consumer price index only raised this much. Why are we giving staff employees raises? But then like letting their city budget go unchecked through all things. Like you can't do anything about the police budget. Like you just got to accept it because it's state law.
Yeah, you legally can't lower it.
Yeah.
Unless you lower everybody's.
Yeah.
It can't be lowered without lowering the entire budget for all the departments.
Which to me is insane. Like that is, when I learned that, my mind was blown. Like that is one of the most harmful laws for how cities can function.
Well, I think that started back when we were having the conversation about CCPD because we were contemplating looking at that half-cent sales tax and applying more of it to transit and transportation. And it got lumped in with this idea that people were trying to defund the police. And so the state basically came forward and said, oh, no, we're not going to allow that to happen in Texas, and passed a law saying that you cannot lower the police budget.
Yet again, taking away local control.
That is truly what Jay Chapa is a city manager. Like, I manage what is given to me. And what's currently given to him is a city that is suffocated by state control. Anything people actually want them to do, there's a rule that they basically can't do.
Well, and also small-minded politics, because you can't ever lower the police budget, but all the Republicans want to brag about how they're increasing the police budget. So every year that you do that, that makes it, you can't ever go back down. So you're taking away more and more and more from every other city service. You're making it harder to fix potholes. You're making it harder to provide senior centers. It's less possible for those things to happen if you're also at the same time saying, we want more cops.
I believe you can't go complain that you want things from your city and then just want to lower your taxes over and over again. That's not how it works.
Polar opposite.
Polar opposite request there.
I think a lot of people don't even understand that the entire budget comes from your taxes. So anytime you ask your city to do anything, you are asking them to use your tax dollars to do it.
It is hilarious when they're like, there's this cone and this pole in my yard, like right there, and I'm like mad. And then it's like, then that same person's like, we need to not spend money on, parks and art. I'm like, what? Like,
where do you think it comes from?
you are constantly want to lower your budget, but you want to continue to complain.
So how much exactly are we paying the police department from the general fund? Ann, do you have that number?
I do. The Fort Worth's biggest budget item is police, and it says here is how the city plans to spend $460 million on it. So the total police budget, which includes money from the general fund and...
No, that's just the general fund. The CCPD is a separate budget, and that's what's so crazy is that when you add them together, it's $500 million a year that Fort Worth gives to the police department. And the CCPD basically acts as like a slush fund for the police. It's crazy how flexible that money can be spent. I mean, you talked earlier about how these laws got changed during the last CCPD vote and, the fight to defund the police. And one thing they did back then that I thought was a genius move, because it makes it so much harder to fix this down the road, is they took all the objectionable things out of the CCPD and put it into the general fund, and all the good things out of the general fund and put them into the CCPD. So the after school programs you were talking about with the YMCA, that's paid for through the CCPD now. And so in 2030, when we get to vote again on whether or not we're going to renew the CCPD, now it's going to be harder because the things that we as a city do want are in there. And the things that we don't want, like SWAT vehicles and big old tanks and crazy guns, that's in the general fund. And that we can't touch.
Well, the interesting thing about CCPD is when it was originally created, it was created because we had a high crime rate. And it was created because they needed additional funding to fight crime.
That's what they said, but the crime statistics were already going down before we had ever initiated.
I wasn't here in the 80s, so I can't speak directly to it.
It was 1993.
Maybe it was because the crime rate was high in the 80s and they implemented it in 93. Exactly. So that would make sense to your point that it was already on the decline.
March 4th, 1995.
Oh, good Lord.
So I was close.
I was here.
Another way to look at it is that in the general fund, if I'm saying it right, keep me accountable here, $460 million of that police is, so that general fund is $1.1 billion. Mm-hmm. So when you look at it, that is nearly 42% of the budget. So if you're looking at it in dollars terms, that's, 42% of your dollar that you put to taxes is going to cops.
Yep. And I do want to reiterate, because earlier when you said those ladies wanted to stop funding the YMCA and after school programs like that, that is a way better crime prevention tool than a cop on the street. Because people who might not have anything better to do or might not have other options available to them, if they're able to go have something to do, have them something that keeps them off the streets, less likely to commit any crime. Whereas having an armed cop show up, not that helpful.
Another big thing I learned was that I asked about because there was a moment during, if you remember DEI, where Chris Nettles asked, could we float this $4 million out of our own bank account? And Nettles Jay Chapa kind of said, yeah, maybe a year. But he never talked about how much was in the rainy day fund. So another thing that I also believe that should be clear is everyone should be able to see what's in the Fort Worth City Bank's rainy day fund. It's our money. All right? We should be able to see what's in it. Imagine a retired person looking at the 401k and they can't look at it. The person just says, you got it.
And
right?
The last couple of years, I believe we've had a surplus. So we have a rainy day fund now.
So, so what I learned...
and you talked about that with him at your meeting.
Yeah, and it's 22... It's currently at... So he says... And this was just for the $1.1 billion. So if we have a $3 billion budget, he only told me for the $1.1 billion, the goal is to get that to 25%. So 25% of the general... is at 22% right now. So now you're looking at 22%.
Hold on, I'm lost here. 22% surplus?
No, 22% in the rainy day fund of, if you look at our general fund is $1.1 billion.
Okay.
We today, if that eliminated, if our budget went away, we could last, because there's 22% of that in the bank right now to cover us.
Okay.
So he wants to get that to 25%, which I think he thinks then gets us to 90 days of we can cover 3 months of expenses, which I still think is really low. Your city only got enough money in the bank
to go 90 days in the face of a terrible incident, like a pandemic.
Or a civil war.
Well, I think
you better knock on wood, man.
The other explanation was the amount that is in that fund affects our bonding capacity. So the other thing that the city relies on to do any kind of capital projects is the ability to have bond elections. And to do those bond elections, you have to have a certain amount in the rainy day fund or the surplus.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Oof. This gets complicated.
It's way more complicated than I think most people even want to delve into, which is why it's really great that some of the people that we have been collaborating with are interested in digging into the details. And I think that sometimes staff doesn't expect to be asked these questions, and so they don't take the opportunity to fully explain.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they think people really want to hear the whole answers, but clearly some of us do.
Because how we think is what's important right now. It's a moral document, and so we have to question what are our morals. Mm-hmm. And why does this make sense? Does that make sense? Well, this is how it works. Okay, but does it make sense? Should it? So we think that. And I think they're not ready for those kind of questions at all. And what I would say is the reason why the police are so powerful is because they have a union, but they're also like, there's a lot of communication between them and like, we expect you to pay, you know, and like the contract stuff. There's a lot of good stuff happening. Government employees do not have a association, does not have advocacy. And so it's so sad to me watch people be so punitive on staff raises, staff resources, staff needs. But just because you wear a blue uniform, that means now you're someone where we will give you all things and clap for you.
Well, part of why that is because one of the biggest donors in any city election is the police union.
Well, and if you look at the presentations that were given at all of these budget meetings, there were 5, I think, council priorities. And one of them was public safety. One of the 5 priorities for the entire budget is public safety. And so they will point, like Laurelsdorf does in District 4, and say, well, this is what my constituents want. And whenever we bring up funding for anything else, they say, well, we need to ask the citizens, do they want this? And so they'll point to this being something that the citizens want every single time.
I'm glad that they use the word public safety and not police, but it irks me so bad that when people hear public safety, they only think police.
Yeah.
They don't think bike lanes. They don't think after school programs. They don't think all of these things that keep people safe, keep people like
prevent crime.
Exactly.
As the CCPD was
it's
supposed
in the name.
to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, this is why I said to Trinity Metro, you should apply for CCPD dollars to improve your bus stops.
Yes.
Because that is something that will be public safety.
Mm-hmm.
I think something else that's really important. I think I've already said this before, but we can't. So like we have that Fort Worth lab that makes sure that we're making everyone else's budgets efficient and optimized. We can't touch 42% of the budget.
Right.
Like
it just ties their hands where they can't do what needs to be done.
And that's so unethical.
Mm-hmm.
It's so unethical that the same people who are like, lower my taxes, like quit spending money, like, but then like, let's not audit the police. Like, it's just like, how do we get here? Like, how do we get here? You know how we got here? This is how you get here with 30 years of Republican leadership. It makes no sense that you as a government employee or person who's advocating for government staff to even think that Republican leadership is the right way for you, because the entire agenda, even with Project 2025, is to shrink and eliminate government services, government staff. And so there's thousands of you who work in there. You got to quit kissing the ring because they're your bosses today, because at the end of the day, their whole agenda is not to make you successful.
And to your point about our budget not cracking the top 25, since 2008, when we had a recession and we had to cut a lot of things and tighten belts, the city has continued to grow, and we've continued to start every budget cycle with how much can you cut to start right off the bat?
They're asked to cut 3% immediately.
Yeah. This year they said 1% to start with, and then they had everybody look at 3%. But they wanted everybody to start with absolutely no more, that you have to start with cutting 1%. And people, as a councilwoman, I sat there and listened to constituents asking for things and had to remind people, the only way I can provide those things is with your tax dollars. So if you fight taxes over here and insist on services over here, that just doesn't work. That equation does not work. The math is not mathing. So on story number 2, we were talking about Tarrant County Sheriff refused to give a briefing requested by Commissioner Simmons on jail deaths. And I happened to be at this meeting because I was there to support Commissioner Simmons in her request to add some of the polling locations back into early voting and election day. So instead of just sitting there for the topic that I was there for, I saw some of the other agenda items and realized that there were probably about 6 things that I should have signed up to speak on. But one of them was that the county commissioner for Precinct 2 had asked for a briefing on jail deaths, because there's been additional jail deaths since our sheriff has attended a meeting to share what is going on.
Please correct me if I'm wrong, but last I heard, Sheriff Bill Wayborn is responsible for the second most jail deaths in the country. I think it's only LA that has more.
I haven't heard anything.
I saw an article that did reference that, but I don't know for a total fact. There has been some discussion about whether it's been 75 or 76 jail deaths.
Because of the pregnant woman?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because that person was not in custody the unborn or the child that was born and then later died at JPS was not in custody, so it's not counted as an in custody death. But
like, listen to that sentence. That's such an evil sentence.
Yeah, but
that's why Commissioner Simmons says she counts that.
1,000,000%.
Yeah. He refused to show up. He sent an email to the county administrator and asked him to read that email. And it literally said that he would not subject himself or his staff to the rudeness of Commissioner Simmons, which is so ridiculous. But I guess that means that anybody else could request that he comes, and maybe he comes. Maybe it's just her that he's refusing to show up for.
Better get Roger on it.
Somebody else needs to ask for it. But to her point, it was not her asking. She was asking for constituents because constituents have been showing up at county commissioner meetings for months asking for this information.
And I do want to remind people, these are jail deaths, not prison deaths. These are people who are not convicted of anything. These are people who haven't gone to trial, nothing. These are just people who've been arrested and charged with who knows what and trapped and not taken care of and die in custody. Yeah. That's insane.
And it did come up that the sheriff's son has been arrested, but he didn't end up in jail.
I also do want to clarify, no one in prison should die either. But these are people who just, they did, it's insane.
So I guess we have to keep showing up at Commissioner's Court in order to...
Bill's there to 2028, so...
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, that election just happened not very long ago.
Don't take your foot off the gas. Hold them accountable.
Awesome. So now we're going to go to short story number 3, which is still in the county level. I'm actually really excited that the Star-Telegram and the Fort Worth Report really kept up with this. But basically, a pro-Palestinian activist gets 180 days in jail for a North Texas church graffiti. The reason why this is important is because this case got relatively state popular, and they were trying to make a point, and there's been talks, as you've seen, by Donald Trump and his administration to really arrest and penalize people for free speech against Israel. And so I guess what I wanted to talk about here, and why I think a news for us to discuss, is that the individual that spray painted Uncommon Church in Euless was up for possibly getting 10 years for doing that because they were going to call it a hate crime. And the juror actually said, no, it's not a hate crime. He doesn't even need any type of time. We're just going to do 5 years probation. And
that's a lot.
Yeah, but instead, the judge says he has to do 6 months in jail. And so this is a blatant attack on people who obviously see this is a Zionist kind of energy where if you're not pro-Israel, you should not be able to have the freedom of the process, and you should be in prison for 10 years. I mean, in jail or for 10 years, wherever you go. And that is scary because we're out here trying to use our freedom of speech to very hard fascist ideologies. And now you're seeing these kind of things where, yes, this person did an illegal activity, but now you're trying to make it a hate crime and use him as an example. And that's just dangerous. And I can't believe that actually more people aren't aware of this story.
Yeah, I mean, they basically said that the jury gave him 5 years of probation and that the judge said, nope, we're adding 180 days of jail time as a condition of the probation after the jury verdict. And because the jury verdict was 2 years suspended sentence. So there would not have been any jail time. I'm not sure how that works. When does a judge, I guess a judge can step in and make things worse, or maybe even the other way around. I don't know.
Aren't you married to a lawyer?
I am, but he doesn't do criminal law.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because we look at the judicial branch as being a stopgap in some of the things that we're facing, across this country right now. And if judges are going to be stepping in and overriding what jurors' sentences are, and they're going to do it in a way that is punitive
and
to
contradictory
protesters,
to what the jurors came to a decision on.
Yeah. I think that can be problematic. But I also see it as judges maybe not being that stopgap that we were all hoping that they would be.
So it's important to know that this individual was arrested for allegedly spray painting F Israel. That is, and putting a pro-Palestine sticker on a church is what he kind of did. But a hate crime has to be to a marginalized ethnic group of people. So it would be like, you're not your government or your state like that. He didn't say anything about Jews. He said Israel and their military propaganda that they're doing right now that is eliminating and having a genocide on a group of people. And I think this is a story to continue to watch because there was another individual who's also having a trial in the future pretty soon. And so, why this is...
I would hope that this would go to appeals too.
Yeah. And why this is important is because Beau French, Texas Attorney General Kim Paxton, has opened an anti-Semitism investigation into Plano ISD. There's a bunch of different, even the politicians that are watching this case is pressuring the judge to basically try to eliminate this guy's freedom because of an incident, because they're trying to
make an example
of him. And this is to me one of my regrets in the pod is we didn't talk about Gaza and what's happening there, and we haven't had
we said at the beginning, we focus on local.
Yeah, we focus on local. And so now that I feel like we have a local story, it's great to have the conversation. And I would love people who have full context on this story. You're more than welcome to come on the pod so that more people are aware of what's happening to activists who are trying to stop a genocide. So I feel like the best place, and I'm going to have you link this in the description because they did a slider. It was the Free Palestine at .Tarrant Instagram. But it looks like throughout this trial, Tarrant County prosecutors, under the direction of District Attorney Phil Sorrells, pushed their pro-Zionist and Islamic-phobic Christian extremism into the legal system. Basically, how they're seeing this is failing to secure the hate crime enhancement. DA Phil Sorrells, criminally prosecutor Lloyd Weschel, and conservative judge Brian Bolton, which some of the tweets around this whole thing is just insane, but was backed by Christian extremist PACs, resorted to a racist smear campaign, framing the individual as a dangerous person. So there was a lot of social media, thinking Beau French catching this, and trying to make this person come out a villain. And Phil Sorrells is also dangerous, as we all know. All the
county
things,
district attorney
is a dangerous person.
And his election is in 2026.
There we go.
And so we definitely, and I know there's other people who want to come on the pod to talk about all the district attorney mess. So we might have that as well on the docket. Yeah, let's go ahead and move into wins and losses.
Oh, I love the first win.
Well, to kick us off for
nice.
wins, my wife is pregnant. We're having a baby.
Nice.
Yep.
That is so exciting.
March 19th, we're having a little one. And one more person to help fight for a better world.
Excellent. We need all the help we can take.
That person will absolutely be doing that with the parents that they will have.
Yep.
Yeah. I always said I'm jealous that I have Wesley's upbringing, and now I actually would argue I'm jealous that I don't have his kids' upbringing. It's gonna
you want to be Wesley and Amanda's child?
Yeah, can I get?
We might adopt you.
Yeah, I probably that kid's gonna have an amazing life. Kind of jealous.
So. Fingers crossed. Yeah, that's exciting news.
Also, y'all had kudos to a couple that we had the Trinity Book Festival that I was at. That went really well. Just seeing all the authors and all the conversations that were happening there in Fort Worth. So many
things happening that day.
Yeah,
we went together last year, and I had a reminder on my Facebook saying, last year you were at this Trinity Book Fest with EJ, and then this year I had FOMO because I saw pictures of you there again, and I missed it.
Well, maybe this year EJ had FOMO because we were at State of the Arts.
Exactly,
on
I
Saturday.
did. I actually was going to ask you guys if you want to send me a group text, I could put it on the Instagram because I didn't put that on the Instagram. That y'all were there.
Sure. But
yeah,
because I bet we had a group of people.
Together.
I saw other people who are gather adjacent.
Yes, indeed, good folks. Yeah, it was for those who don't know, it's the Arts and Culture Conference that I host every year with Steer Fort Worth. It was at Amphibian Stage. We had so many great panels, great performances. It was a fun time. It just made for a very long weekend for me because the day before was the Amphibian Stage fundraiser.
Which I missed too. I was sorry to do that.
That's
family stuff on Friday nights.
It was a crazy busy weekend, but a lot of fun, a lot of friends.
Another one you guys have, though, is that when we talk about budget, Fort Worth is poised to spend $79 million on parks, green space, and preservation in 2026.
Yes.
I think it's the biggest budget for that we've had.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's exciting. I haven't nerded out on it and see what it compares to the other
Other
15 cities.
That would be very interesting statistics.
I know.
Probably need to dig into these things a little bit more deeply.
No, but I think that's the brain we need to all be in with like Fort Worth. I think Fort Worth is so used to getting crumbs that we celebrate when we get them, but we never question what should we actually deserve. What do other people our size actually get for this?
Well, sometimes getting the statistics, it's very apples to oranges, so it's hard to have comparisons. But I remember a year or two ago, Community Design Fort Worth had a discussion about parks and green spaces and learning like how much Philly has compared to us, when I think them as being so much more dense, but Fort Worth just didn't have the forethought to preserve these earlier. And so now we're trying to scoop up the scraps of green spaces we have left.
Philly ISD school budget is the size of our city budget.
Ooh.
If you want to look at, how it's all set up.
So there's two more wins in that Trinity Metro is looking at transit-oriented development. So we're very excited about that. We love it when our transit authority is looking beyond just providing transit, but actually having land uses around that transit that can be beneficial for mixed-use walkable communities. So that's always a good thing.
Yeah. And if you want to see a great example of transit-oriented development, go check out Grapevine Main Street Station, because they built the whole thing around that Texrail stop, and it's so packed all the time, and like sales tax revenue through the roof, so many great events. Like, we need to do more of that.
Yep. I know several people who went to the Grape Fest this weekend on Texrail. So that is definitely something that is growing. And then JPS Health Network is opening a new psychiatric emergency center in Fort Worth. This was also one of the items that was discussed on the commissioner's court meeting that I was at. And unfortunately, that was not a good news story, because they were putting a little bit of a cap on their on their tax revenue. And that's going to be hard for them, because that's their most stable part of their budget. Yeah. Other aspects of their budget come from things that are out of their control. Federal government stuff that can be very flexible and can cause them some big problems. So it's good that we're going to have a new psychiatric emergency center. I took a tour of it before it was completed, and it's amazing. They're going to be able to have intake for people that are minors, separate from adults. They're going to have intake for people who are coming of their own accord, and those that are being brought in not of their own accord, which is all good things to be able to have separately. My only concern is that we need a whole lot more mental health services beyond just an emergency response. And if we don't have all of that, then that emergency reaction is going to have to continue to be really robust. Exactly. And that's not the best way to address mental health issues.
Exactly. We had this conversation on the 817 Gather Discord, is that like, it's nice to have somewhere to take people, but getting them there, if it's a stranger having a mental episode, what are you supposed to do other than call a cop? And you expect an untrained, armed police officer with no knowledge of mental health or de-escalation, you expect them to safely get this person to the help that they need. Wish we had more options.
All right, so the one we talked about a lot of this. This episode was kind of a relatively loss for Fort Worth. We have a leader who's
inviting
agitating extremists, but this loss is how much does Fort Worth council members spend on travel? And obviously, if you're not getting paid anything, you obviously need to have a budget for travel. But when you look at, I think what's very interesting on this is Fort Worth City Council members spent $145,000 on travel expenses.
Isn't that we know of? Because the point of the article is that we can't pinpoint the number?
Yes, correct. Yeah, so this is out of what we can understand, and this is for 2022 and 2023. And so the Fort Worth report has a graph, and it kind of shows where the council members are. And Michael Crane, his fiscal year 2023 spent $39,393, and in 2022 it was $17,494.
Isn't 17,000 how much city council gets paid?
I think they get paid like 25.
25 now.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And some of this went to $16,000 for a 9-day trip to Colorado for the Aspen Institute Executive Leadership Seminar, which I also am aware there was also other staff. Well, there was other Fort Worth people there. That was also in the mix. But $16,000 to go to Colorado?
Yeah.
Michael Crane has an expense for $16,000 to go to Colorado.
You could drive there for 2 tanks of gas.
Yeah.
Was it the summit itself? Like, the tuition for the summit that was expensive.
That's insane though. Like, and also like pay that out of your own pocket.
And if you follow
that was so my point in looking at all of this is, yes, I do believe there should be a budget. There are things that city council members can benefit from attending.
For sure.
When I was on the council, we went to National League of Cities every year in Washington, D.C. We went to wherever it was being hosted by a member city across the country. I learned a ton of things that other cities were doing that I could bring back and suggest that we do in Fort Worth. And I think that was very beneficial.
Yes, good use of funds.
But if there was anything that I did that I thought benefited me professionally, personally as a city planner, even though it also benefited the city for me to go and learn about it, I paid for it myself. And I'm torn about this because I do have the ability to do that. And I would like more council members with a broader diversity of experience to be able to serve on council and have access to things that are beneficial to their own selves and to the community. But I think it seems very lopsided in some, and some of these people haven't been on council that long, so they haven't really had the opportunity to do this yet. But for example, I went to city planning conferences that clearly benefited the city for me to have that knowledge, but it also benefited me as a city planner in whatever I happen to go on and do in the future. So those were things that I paid for myself. There's also a lot of budget in here for sister cities. I think it's beneficial for us to have these relationships with other cities. I went on a sister cities trip when I was on council. My husband went as well. We paid our own way on that trip. I didn't use any city funding for that. And I did go do city interactions. I met with other electeds in Budapest. I went and learned about their transportation system.
Hey.
But again, that was also part of my own personal passion of things that I want to work on for my entire life. So, and I was on vacation. I wanted to be able to be on vacation too. So
Michael Crane's on every trip. I mean, it's almost like to a point, like based off of like just expenses. It's like he kind of reminds me because he kind of reminds me of a kid who never wants to go home, so he goes on every school trip. Like Michael Crane goes on every trip.
He loves a good photo op.
Yeah, loves a good photo op. Loves to be out there, but like $16,000 for Colorado. I mean, we got to watch. And I also just think like something we've never talked about with Michael Crane is we never talked about the golf course and how his own business partner is suing him for basically not doing any work. And he was going to use his political leverage to help with the golf course or whatever they thought the relationship was going to be. Like, so I'm just, again, this guy is, to me, clearly wants to try to run for the mayoral seat if Mattie ever gives it up. But I think what makes him dangerous is that he pushes the limits on things like travel, but also on like why does, like how he is able to get communication out. I think he's always trying to find a way to leverage for himself. And I'm not sure if these actions are just good for the city. And then, you're on Facebook saying another person is demonic. So I just don't know what his real goals or aspirations are. And $16,000 to go to Colorado could at least give you a education on how to communicate with other government officials.
Well, and I think a while back we had a city manager say that the previous city manager said he wanted to put everything that should be open for the public to see and be as transparent as possible so that we weren't required to make everybody jump through the hoop of doing an open records request.
Who said that?
David Cook said that when he very first came on board 10 years ago.
Shocking to hear.
And I don't think it ever happened. I don't think it ever happened.
Well, he got to the Aspen on a PJ, so they could have figured that out too, going back to this aviation
on the Bass private plane.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking they just need to put all this stuff out there and be as transparent as possible if that's what we're supposed to be doing with government. Yeah. Government is supposed to be transparent.
I like that.
So now we're going to go ahead and move into actions. Actions you could take this week is 9/16. The City of Fort Worth budget will vote on the budget. There's not much you can do as a person to change that, but you could at least, I think, be there, share public comments of what you care about, what some ways you would like them to see it, so you could do that. Also, 9/20 at the Dock Bookshop, there's a Grassroots Organizers Summit that's happening. Tarrant for Change will be there. A couple other organizing groups that are getting together. I think that's actually an exciting move. So I wish I was in town to go, but Grassroots Organizer Summit 9/20.
So 2 things that we have going on at Community Design Fort Worth. Our monthly transit mixer is on the 17th. We will be having somebody from the city talking about the Move a Million plan. So if you are a transit nerd like Wesley and I are, you can show up for that. We meet the 3rd Wednesday of the month every month. So that's the 17th of this month. And then on the 20th...
Well, it's at Acre Distilling from 4:30 to 6:30.
Right. And this month, our speaker has another obligation that he has to get to. So he will be speaking closer to the 4:30 mark. So if you want to hear what he has to say out of his mouth, you'll need to be there around 4:30. But if we can always reiterate those things after for those who can't get there by 4:30.
And the Grassroots Organization Summit thing is at 3:30.
Okay, then they don't... Then you wouldn't be able to do all of both.
Yeah.
Pick and choose.
What's the other thing on the 20th?
The other thing on the 20th is early in the morning and doesn't conflict with either of these things. And that is that Trinity Metro every year does a bus stop cleanup. And Community Design Fort Worth has signed up to do Route 1, which is the most reliable route of the system, the Hemp Hill Corridor. And so if you want to sign up just in general to help with the bus stop cleanup, you can do that through Trinity Metro. If you want to sign up to help Community Design Fort Worth's committee, you can sign up via our social media. You can join us cleaning up Route 1 along the Hemp Hill Corridor.
Another action that we always forget is coming to the 817 Gather. So, of course, we do a weekly podcast, but every 3rd Sunday of the month, we actually get together in person to organize around things that we are discussing. And so come to that. It's at 10 a.m. at Blank Co-working and Studios. We would love to see you there. Link in the bio to sign up. All right, so there you have it. Thank you for listening to the 817 podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, share with a friend as we continue to give this every week to make sure we're informed and ready to make impact in this city.